So I want to say, Nolda's right. I'm the biggest kid there, maybe. You know, when we put in the bungee jump exhibit a couple of years ago, I was the first one to get in the ropes and go up and do flips. And, you know, I'm this 50-year-old guy doing that. But I think that part of us that's still alive, that loves to do these things, is what drives me every day. So I'm going to show you a little bit about that today. I think the best thing for me to do is try and go through some of the history. Oops, I hit something wrong. Just click it on again. There we go. I'm going to go through a little bit of the history of the museum real quick, just so you know where we came from and where we're headed and how we got to where we are. So our campus is situated in the middle of Durham, and you can see this is the park. This is one of an old wetland quarry. So there's these 50-foot sheer rock walls around there. And then the main museum is off there to the left, and we have parking. We have a butterfly conservatory. We have about 84 acres there to play with. So it's like the greatest place in the world to work if you're a landscape architect. Because there's kids, there's science, there's a lot of really good people there, and you get the freedom to kind of invent as you're working. So we have a lot going on there, and always have, and we're always growing. You know, we have typical indoor exhibits. On your left, you see some of the things that we have. We have a little train loop that goes around part of the campus. We have community outreach through education. We have a lab in there where we bring kids in and they sit in a lab setting and we teach them. And we have facilitation on the floor. Then also outside, we have a lot of animals and science exhibits. So it's kind of different. And this is the guy we live for. You know, these are the people that come every day, and they're wide-eyed, and if you're ever bored at your desk, you just go downstairs and stay outside for 5 minutes, and your day begins again. You know, nothing bad. These guys and little girls and just the funny things they say every day and the funny things we hear, it really makes it to be a great place to work. So, you know, one of the things we strive for is to give the kids a safe place to play and freedom to explore. And some days we do that a little too well, as evidenced by multiple calls that go out. There's a lost child somewhere on campus, or there's a lost parent. We get that too. You know, so you see 50 people running around with radios trying to find the kid or the child, and they always find them. They're somewhere. But I think that speaks to the point that we've created a place where parents feel safe with their kids. And they don't normally freak out if they lose them. You know, I had a lady come up to me a couple weeks ago, same thing. She lost her son. She was very calm. She goes, I know, we come here all the time. I know he's somewhere. And we did find him. You know, but that providing that safe place is a big thing for parents. You know, they want to make sure that their kids are safe. So part of the mantra of the museum is that, you know, we believe that humans make meaning and generate knowledge about their world through direct experience and activity within a social context. And that's a big thing for us. We want people to come there and experience and just learn what they can without signage mostly. And we try and facilitate it if we can, but mostly it's hands-off. They got to this point of growing into the outdoor spaces back in the early 90s. Robin mentioned this last night, like, how is this a new topic, getting kids out into nature? No, it's been talked about for 40 years. And the museum's been talking about it for 25 years. Back in the 90s, they did an early master plan and talk about, well, how do we develop this space and what's important about this space? That we have this unique area where we've got a building and 85 acres along with it. And their big thing was interactive exhibits outside in nature. And so the first part of that was the butterfly conservatory that we put up. The next part is some of what I'm going to talk to you about. But this is mainly the area that got developed in the last 15 years or so. The butterfly conservatory is here, and everything south of there was all that the museum had. They had this land back here, but it was undeveloped. And so now what you see is what we've developed so far. The blue in the middle is the bottom of the quarry. It's about an 18-inch deep wetland. And this is kind of what got put out there. And about from 2002 to 2006, we built some of these outdoor exhibits with the help of developers and designers and planners. Back up a minute. This is a seed tower. Kids take these little felt seeds on magnets, and it goes up 30 feet in the air, and they're different shapes and weights, and they fall down, and they run around and catch them. You know, it's a really cool little exercise, very simple. This is the sailboat pond that we have where the sails are wind-driven. The kids on the kiosks are controlling only the direction of the sail and the direction of the rudder. So sometimes the boat gets to the side, the kid runs around and pushes it back to the middle, but a lot of times they can control it right there. And some of the speakers spoke about flow. You want to see flow, look at these kids on these controllers. They are, you know, they're focused. This is the wetland setting. We built a boardwalk to get from the top down into the wetland, put people out in the nature so that they can see. We have resident ducks and geese and turtles. God, there's a lot of turtles and snakes down there. But that provides a really good opportunity for summer camp when kids come, and we can just walk them down there. We don't have to go somewhere. Great places for observation and conversation. And did I mention we have animals? So we have, one of the first things I did when I was at the museum was I helped figure out how the lemur exhibit was going to go in, and I learned that a lemur can jump 20 feet. That's the most important thing to know, because you don't want them jumping out of the exhibit and running away. And so I had to learn that they can jump 20 feet. And so we had to clear trees and figure out what tree was going to grow eventually. And we still do pruning and things like that, but the lemurs are a cool exhibit. They're an extension of the Duke Lemur Center. All of our animals are, you know, on a conservation basis there, the bears that we have and the lemurs and the red wolves. We have a pair of red wolves there consistently. This is the bear exhibit that you can see the old quarry wall in the background. It made for a great exhibit. It's one of the best ones I've ever seen, I think. And we do have some fake rock in there so we could create a pond for the bears to swim in and eat watermelons out of when we feed it to them. But it's a nice, really nice setting. There's a little close-up of the bears. And then we have a dinosaur trail. You know. So the thing about the dinosaur trail is, you know, we did a lot of research, similar to your 25 years of where does the building go. We had scientists and experts, and what did the dinosaurs look like, and how big were they, and how did they move, and what did they eat? And we spent a lot of money, you know, researching, because it's important. We want to present the right thing, you know, like the history. You want it to be right, as far as you know. But, you know, part of the dinosaur trail and putting the dinosaurs and the little signs about them was we put a fossil dig pit in where we haul in fossil leftovers from the phosphate mine at the coast here. Well, where do kids spend all their time? Here. Why? We know why. Everybody here knows why. It's because it's hands-on. They're finding fossils. A young man a couple years ago found a $5,000 fossil there. You know, a little jawbone. They find shark's teeth all the time, and we let them take them home. And we replenish this as we need to, or Christian does, wherever he is back here. But I used to do it too. But when we built this, you know, the dinosaurs are beautiful, but the kids walk through there in about 5 minutes. And you're right, they want to have that thing that they can grab onto and learn from. And this has been replicated other places, but it'll never be unpopular because of what it is. So what guides us at the museum? I'm not going to read these, but these are some of the main points that we try to live by there. And one of the big ones is provide a place of lifelong learning where science is a way of knowing pretty much about everything. The statement goes on, but that's the part I remember. Science is a way of knowing. We want people to experience science and know it in their head, and then when they experience it through one of our exhibits or out in the world, they want to be able to explain it, and we hope we had a part in that. And the other thing, make visitors feel safe enough to allow for that exploration. Some of our exhibits have fences around the perimeter. You can't always see the fence, but parents know it's there. When a new exhibit opens, we tell them, hey, there's a perimeter fence. Some of it's not solid fence, some of it's just cabling, but it's enough with cabling and shrubbery to keep the kids in. They don't really want to go outside the fence. There's nothing exciting out there. But you want to give parents that sense that there's one way in and one way out, and if I lose my kid sight line for 2 minutes, I know he's got to pass through this point, or she's got to pass through this point. So that's a big part of our design philosophy there. And then what guides me as a designer when I came there, before I came there, like what am I passionate about? Well, you know, I grew up on a farm, which was great now that I look back. You know, I wasn't so thrilled about it then. But I did a lot of the same things other people have talked about. I played in streams, baled hay. But what I learned over time as a designer is that any site speaks to you. You got to pay attention. If you have a flat site and it's sandy and it's dirty and there's not a tree on it, it's still telling you something. That site was not always flat and sandy and ugly like that. It has a history somewhere, and maybe trying to take it back to that history will help you. One of the play spaces we'll see was in a woodland, and there was an old rivulet down through there that used to be a stream. Not many people noticed that when we first went in there, you know, but I did because it's, you know, that's who I am, kind of. So you could see where the water had been flowing through there historically. It had been blocked off a long time ago. But it made me think and that it was possible to add one of the elements that you'll see that is very important to the exhibit. Go big when you design. God knows, don't start small and try and grow. Think about the biggest thing you can think about. It's easy to cut back. You can either, if you have no money, you can find a substitute or cut the thing in half. But don't start small. If you say you have the size of this stage, well then think that the place could be as big as this room and work your way backwards a little bit. The other thing that I've learned, I think, from being at the museum, my time there, is that, is everybody aware of like the maker movement? It's a big thing at the museum, but I think everybody is a maker in some way, shape, or form. Everybody has a talent. Some of us have the same talent, but finding the diversity of that talents to bring them into the design process is really important, because you always find somebody that says something you didn't think about. Fail better, try a lot, prototype. You know, we fail a lot at the museum, and we're allowed to fail a lot, which is really good. Otherwise, people are afraid to try. They're afraid to lose a little bit of money here and there. But it's important to be able to go through that process to get to a really valuable thing. And experimentation, iteration, collaboration. I use those three words a lot when I'm talking to people that are thinking about getting into the field, or you know, just talking in general, because we iterate a lot in our designs. We think we have that great idea. We've been through it 10 times, and we get out in the field and we put the first rock down and we're like, oh, that doesn't look good there. We got to move that. Or we got to change to a boulder or a log instead of a rock. So allow for that. It's good. It's a good thing. So I'm going to talk about a couple of the exhibits that we have at the museum, and how we came up with them, and kind of some of those lessons we learned as we went along. But they're two of the most popular ones. They were both somewhat design build. The first one was totally design build. The one that we just recently opened, Hideaway Woods, was kind of collaborative design, and we hired some contractors to do some of the big building because we can't do everything. We're a private nonprofit. We're always understaffed like every other nonprofit, and the state, it sounds like, too. So we have to hire out contractors on these bigger jobs, but we do try to guide them quite a bit while we're doing it. So the first exhibit, it was right when I got there, and we have this big campus, and it's hot in North Carolina, as everybody knows, and it's steamy. And we had just built this big outdoor space that had some of those exhibits and those animals out there. But what we were finding was stroller moms and dads were going to the building where it's air conditioned. They were going just outside the building to the playground where there was a sandbox, and they weren't going any further. They might go to the farmyard or the butterfly house, but they wouldn't go out into the park because it was just too hot most of the days in the summer. And so we were sitting around there kicking out ideas. Well, what's cool? Mist is cool. And Roy and I kind of sat there, my boss, Roy Griffiths, and said, well, I said, I cross across the Neuse River every day, and I see the mist rivulets rising up the Neuse, off the Neuse. And he goes, yeah, I did that in a canoe. And wouldn't that be cool if we could recreate that experience, immerse people in rising mist? This is my house, actually. It's up there on the hill. So I get to look at this every once in a while, but I saw this a couple months ago, and I was like, that's a really nice shot. This is what inspired me. So Roy said, we tried this several years ago, and it just didn't work. So this is a manure pile. They were trying to trap the mist and figure out how to keep the experience, and this is what we had. We had a lot of manure from all the animals. And this poor guy is trapped in there with a misting pump and a station, crouched down in the manure horseshoe. And you can see it worked. But it wasn't, I wasn't there at the time, but it wasn't really effective. They couldn't mass produce, they couldn't scale it up to make it an exhibit. So they kind of abandoned it. But when he pulled up this photograph, I about fell out of my chair. I was like, yeah, that could have been me, thank God. So I started out with a really simple design with our team had input into what was going to go into this mist play space that we wanted to create. And I'm not a great graphics guy. I'm still learning like everybody else, trying to catch up with SketchUp and 3D. I started out in CAD, so I did some of the scribbling in a 2D format, and what we decided was it was really good to have topography to hold mist in place, because at first the plants were going to be small, and we knew we couldn't afford to bring them in big enough to hold the mist in place. So we used some topography. So we built up these mounds here and here to kind of trap the mist in this area. In this area, we dug down in the earth and made a bowl to trap it down in there. And then in this intermediate area, we just created these little, kind of a much smaller version of what you see out here in the museum's new expansion, a little mogul lawn where kids could run across. So my first couple thoughts were I wanted them to be able to see the mist, number one, cool down, and their parents to be able to cool down, to be able to see rainbows, hopefully, because it's sunny out there, as the mist comes up. I wanted them to be able to see how wind affects the mist as it blows through the air, because the sailboat pond is just on the other side of that restroom building. So there is wind up there. It's on a ridge. And the last thing is I wanted them to be able to see how mist moved through topography, and I wanted them to be able to experience topography. Because like I said, this isn't an old quarry site, so this is up on the ridge, and right here, this thing drops down 50 feet to the wetland. It's really pretty, but we don't want kids just diving down that hill. Hence the perimeter fence that's everywhere. This is the cable fence I was talking about that just has shrubbery planted around it. one way in, one way out. It's kind of important in this setting because we do, we're in that 2 to 12 range is our target. So this is what we created. And the first little dome sculpture there was a sculptural piece that we wanted to kind of bring art into the mist. And so I've got to tell 2 little quick stories if I have time, hopefully. So the first day I'm out there, the press is there, the major donor is there, and we let some kids into the event. And one of them was a little 2-year-old boy. Somebody had run in and turned the mist on already in this little dome space, and he wouldn't go in. He was like, he's backing up, goes back to his mom. And I'm standing there just freaking out, going, I never thought of this. He was afraid of the mist. He couldn't see 5 feet in front of him and his brother and sister that were already in there, and he would not go in. He eventually went in, and I, big sigh, things worked out, but that was something I never thought of. So that was a good lesson learned. Like, you can't think of everything that a kid's going to do when they get into your play space. You have to observe, you have to adapt, because we need to change some things maybe. The other great story about this was open a couple weeks, and I was standing out there still observing what kids were doing, and it was full of people. They were excited about this. It was people were having fun. And there were a couple mothers there, and one of the mothers said, who the hell thought to put sand and water together? We have a little sand play area in there. I didn't say anything, I backed up. I just, at that point, you don't want to intervene. But yes, there's sand in the exhibit, and there's water in the exhibit. And you'll see some of that here. But you can see the kids are having a blast in there. This is the little mogul field that's AstroTurf that's in there. We figured out pretty quickly that we couldn't put natural grass in there. It just takes too much of a beating. I didn't mention it, but our attendance has grown from like 225,000 to over 500,000 last year. This is in like the last 7 or 8 years. So we've had a big ramp up in attendance. You can see them, these little buttons activate the mist. We're really big on interactivity. Kids are, I should say. I am too. I like to hit things and see what happens. So we try to provide buttons and activators and things like that will give them lots of fun. So this is a nature playscape. Part of it, it's this little village space. It's about a half an acre. This is a willow tunnel that we made to connect these mounds, very similar to what you saw on the last presentation, but it's mole holes, and they love that. We had a big rock in there, a little place for kids to crawl under and kind of hang out. Another thing I'd never anticipated, so no kids hung out in there, I don't think ever. What they do is they run up to the top and stand on top, which after I saw them do it the first time, I was like, yeah, that's what I would have done. You go up to the highest place, you're like, hey, look at me, and then you come running back down. You can see the turf took a beating, but yeah, it's okay. There's kids hanging out in the space. We've reseeded, we've tried putting steps up onto the mounds to try and direct some traffic. We're still experimenting with it, but overall it's been a really good experience. This is the little bowl that we use. We dug into the ground, and mist comes out of there as well. And it holds the mist really well too. On a humid day, it just kind of hangs in there and gets really cloudy. Here's the sand. So this tree has drip emitters on the end with a really complicated system of controls, but what it does, basically, the kids hit the buttons and the nozzles send rain droplets down. We also occasionally, we used to have a mister on there, and we'll probably put that back. But we wanted them to see how erosion happened from water and mist. So water drips out of those arms of the tree onto the rock and kind of erodes the sand in places and as they build things there. But this is one of the other activities that they do too. They just stand under it, you know, and it's kind of a nice art piece. It's one of these ones, we don't know if it was a great success. We might turn it over shortly. It's okay. It's worked for now, but we tried it. This was one of the ones I was talking to someone, maybe it was you, Cam, or somebody about prototyping. So we prototyped this on a small scale. It was a huge success. Kids loved it in the park, in the playground area. We scaled it up to this, and then it just didn't get used. Not in the way that not like the activities that we were hoping would occur there. So, you know, prototyping doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, but when especially when you're trying to scale something bigger, it doesn't always work out. So right at the edge of the cliff, we built this little cob hut, and there's a window in the back that you can look out down to the wetland. Again, I wanted them to like experience this whole thing about moving through topography with the mist and so it kind of has a circuit, and so that was Into the Mist. That was one of my first forays into museum design. This next one is our latest opening. We opened middle of last year. This is called Hideaway Woods. It's been a huge success. About 2 acres. This is the little train track that goes around. We had that. We had this interstitial space, which was wooded, older pine woods, 80, 90 foot tall pines. Some hardwoods mixed in. There's a beautiful beech tree in the back. But we designated this as a space we wanted to work with. And again, we have a train here, which is controlled by the Department of Labor. You know, they come and inspect. So we had to provide a safe way in and out. So tunnel was the solution for us. We put a tunnel under the train track so that we didn't have to deal with the train, really. There's a fence all around the perimeter, and people go in there. They don't know the fence is there, you can't hardly see it. But it keeps people safe in this space. Sorry, I'm going to catch up to my notes a little bit, too. This was the initial design. We worked with Jeff Kennedy Architects out of Boston. They're great museum exhibit designers. One of their principal employees is Tim Darr. He's a landscape architect. He did a lot of the treehouse design and the layout. We did a lot of the installation and follow through. But it was a big collaborative effort between our whole exhibits team and them. This was a quote from our CEO, Barry Vandeman, who's wonderful. But you can read through that, and that explains what Hideaway Woods is. I couldn't say it any better than that. He's much more eloquent than I am. This is where I want to play that video, and I can't see it up here anymore. So I'm going to play a little video, because that's the best way to see the space besides being there. So if you can get there, come visit. But I'm going to play a short little video that shows.
Hideaway Woods is the space that's completely devoted to play in nature. We are supporting nature play. You are intentionally interacting with elements from the natural world. They might be rock, it might be soil, it might be bark, it might be leaves. There's no right or wrong way for you to come in and play and be in this space. We hope that it's an invitation for people to discover and explore.
We can climb up to the very high part and say hi to the train.
We have 8 tree houses that range in height from 6 feet off the ground to approximately 20 feet in the air. Our woodland stream, which runs through the middle of our 2 acres. I love to spend time on the sensory ramble, which is a place where you can kick off your shoes and take a walk through the woods. And then we have an early childhood area called Young Explorers that's just for our friends who are ages 0 to 6. We have our tree climbers, and we also have a fantastic sculpture of sweet gum and red maple by Chapel Hill artist Patrick Doherty. It is a fantastical representation of the first encounter that children might have with the natural world. It offers opportunities for hiding, it offers opportunities for hide and seek or a pretty exciting game of chase. And it also offers opportunities to really think about a material in a way that we don't normally get to see it. We wanted every visitor who comes into Hideaway Woods to be able to experience it. One parent who touched me was a mother of a child who uses a wheelchair, and she had tears in her eyes when she hugged me and said this was the first time that my daughter was able to take a walk in the woods with her siblings. So that was extremely powerful for all of us who have worked on this project, and it's what we set out to do because this is a place for everyone to enjoy nature. We have kids who are playing with one another who may not necessarily have arrived together, but they make friends while they're here. We also have kids who are helping other kids. I've done this before, it was scary, let me help you and show you how. And so that's been very satisfying for all of us who worked on the project. It's for children, it's for adults, it's for children and adults together, and we see all of that behavior unfolding. So really when you come through that tunnel, you get to decide, what am I going to discover today?
Can you give me back? Yeah, right. Oh yes, I just need to go to the next slide. So that was Michelle Clota. She works at the museum. She's one of the museum designers on staff, and Kelly Marks is here, and Christian Britt, and they were big proponents of nature play and pushed and pushed and pushed the whole way through this project to, make sure that the natural components were there. And it was a lot of fun, a lot of work. Everybody worked really hard to get this thing in. But you can see some of the early design concepts. Michelle went out all the time and was like looking at trees to see what was interesting and what was going to be cut down, because Duke's campus has a lot of oak trees that are aging out. They're taking trees out all the time, replanting too. City of Durham had a lot of street trees that went over during an especially thunderstormish month we had a couple years ago. And so that's where some of these came from. We had them done, the trees themselves were donated. And so we mocked them up, to see how they would fit in the space. Jeff Kennedy and Associates did the mock-up for us for the tree houses, because this project was built from capital campaign money. So we had to show people what we were trying to do and prove to them that it was going to be a big success and that they ought to donate money to help us get it done. So here we are, we're loading one of the upright trees, mounting it. There's a lot of science behind that. There's a big footing there, there's rebar, just to do it right, and so you can sleep at night. This is what it ended up being. And there's kids taking chances, risking, happy to do it, having fun. There's a walkway path, that's a view from the tree houses. So we have the Chapel Hill gravel in here that, we were talking about at lunchtime, the walk we had, and they've had some trouble with it eroding. We have the same trouble. It's not a perfect substrate, but man, it makes you feel like you're in the woods on a trail. There's no hard edges. The pine straw kind of just blends over the edge. This was the tree houses early on as we were building them. And this is what they ended up being. It's tremendous space. We don't have any barriers really for the kids. They can enter the tree houses in about, in three different places actually. On the back of this, this trail leads to a ramp, an accessible ramp where a handicapped individual could get up into one of the tree houses. We hope to make that 2 tree houses at some time in the future. But right now, you can get all the way up there accessibly to one tree house and be up there with the other kids. It's kind of a nice feeling. But there's nothing to keep anybody from running across and creating goat paths. And we have to maintain a little bit of that, you know. You can see there's sliding boards down, and we have 2 slides that come off of here. The sliding board was another interesting thing. We installed it per the manufacturer, and the first day we're out there, people are flying out the end, and we're having a heart attack because we have surface down, but they're coming out too fast, and so we ended up backing up and tweaking the end a little bit and slowing people down. But it's design iteration. You have to observe, be ready to react. This is the stream that we cut in. We have pine trees there. We did a lot of just being really careful around the trees. We cut the roots, a lot of hand pruning in there before they put the stream fabric down. And we're not stupid. We know we're going to lose some trees to attrition from the compaction and the construction. We are trying to ameliorate that a little bit. We have Bartlett Tree Service come in, and they're doing aeration and fertilization for us as needed. They monitor the trees for us for pest infestations. But it's worked out really well. This is the stream. You saw some kids playing in it earlier. So this is another good story learning point, just quick. So when we had that pretty design there at the beginning, and we had the little models of the tree houses, and we're showing them to our members, and we had banners up, touting this thing. And so one of the first comments we get in from a family was, "How am I going to keep my kid out of the water?" Well, you're not, but that's the kind of things they think about, and then we think about. You can kind of see there's a restroom building up right back in there, kind of sits in the woods really nicely, and we put a changing station out there like you would see at the beach, which I was kind of against it at the beginning, but I'm really glad we did it. It's just a simple structure with a couple of walls where you can go in there, and you got to change pants or shirt or shoes or whatever, you go do it. And people are used to it. They've been really happy with it. And this is why you wake up in the morning, go to work. This is what happens. You get pictures like this, or like that little boy at the beginning in the farmyard. I mean, it's just an incredible, satisfying feeling to see what you've done and how much people are enjoying it. We see a lot of this. That barefoot brain development was something one of the presenters brought up yesterday. I'm a firm believer in that. I mean, we see it every day there. Of course, the first day we opened this place, it rained like the whole day. But we still had, 100 people in there all day long. It just didn't, people were so excited about, because we try to tout it like it's coming soon, and get people pumped that it's coming, and then when we open it, we usually get a mad crush. This is the sensory pathway that Michelle was so influential in pushing and developing. A barefoot exploratory area that's accessible. Most of it is, there's an accessible path through it, but different textures. Where you saw the little kid shaking the tree, it's because there's a bell attached to it. So a couple places in there, we put these little bells on the trees, and you shake them, and it makes noise. There's plants in there that smell good when they're blooming, witch hazel and some other, The other thing is, from a landscape architect's perspective, we always try to use natives. But in this setting, it's not always possible because we need to have evergreens sometimes. Sometimes we need plants to perform a barrier function for us, and it's just not possible with natives, or we don't have the time, honestly. I guess everything's possible. I hate to say something's not possible, but we don't give ourselves enough time to let something grow to fruition where it would be a good barrier. We want to open it and get it open to the public. But everything in here was really intentional. The path, I can't tell you how many hours Michelle and I and Christian and Kelly, everybody spent out there. Before we did any of this, we're out there with the little pink tape going through the woods and out there with the sighting level going, okay, yeah, we can go up 6 inches here, but that means you got to go left around this tree. And so at one point, the woods were just covered in this pink surveying tape, pink and orange and everything else to help us find our way. But this is what resulted from all that planning, a really successful, really happy place for people to go through. And there's a footprint, barefoot development. I love it. And we see that a lot. And we see it in practice. So this is, as was just mentioned in the previous presentation, you need to give young kids a separate place from the big kids because the 8 and 10-year-olds, they just mow down the 2-year-olds. And we're really aware of that. We're giving out Band-Aids all day long. And so with these exhibits, we either try to give parents a place to pull away where they can back away from somebody that's more active than they want to be, or a place all on their own, which is what we did here. So this is the part that we call Young Explorers, and we basically built a mini hideaway woods just for them that's encircled by a fence. So that's the entry to it. These are the beginnings of the little tree houses. That's the finished tree houses. You can see the bridges, the little playthings that we've put in there that were all free, the hollow log that we placed in there. You can see the fence in the background. Patrick Doherty's sculpture is the next thing you come to after Young Explorers. A lot of hide and seek, a lot of running around, play, fun times to be in there. And what's next for us? This is the next big thing. This is the second component of our capital campaign. It's called Earth Moves. And it's all about geology and hands-on geology and what kids and how man has impacted the earth through moving geology. So in the top middle there, you can see it's going to be gravel piles and sand piles. The kids are going to be able to use some elementary machinery to move around. On the bottom or in the middle right, we're going to provide mini excavators that they can sit in and operate the controls and do some digging. We're going to have a stream wandering through there, kind of a mud pit, an erosion experiment, a waterfall. And so these are some of the elementary ideas that we started with the design. Some of these mechanical movers where they can move sand and gravel themselves. They won't be able to move the machine, but they'll be able to sit in the cab, hopefully. Water erosion, blast erosion, this is one of the concept pictures. Piles of just stuff that they can play with, and not directed, just we're going to let them kind of do what they will. A little mud sluice I think this is from Tamarack, but we're going to have something similar to this because we like that part of kids being able to play in mud. If the parents allow it, we're not going to prevent it. We think there's a big learning experience to be had there. So thank you, and come see us.